Hello, I'm Mara, and today we're going to talk about engagement strategies with life after user breakup. Is that the end of the relationship that you will have with your users, or can you get them back? So some housekeeping, the audience is muted. Ask questions in the Q&A bar. The amazing Catherine is here with me today, and she is actually in the same room with me, so she can wave with me if there's a really important question. And she will be letting me know and read the questions at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send the recording to everyone who registered to the webinar. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of this, but fun facts about me, if you haven't seen me speak at Branch before. I am from Romania and I love fantasy stuff. Fun fact, I read over 60 fantasy books last year, and I have a dog. And why am I doing this? Why is this relevant? I started and grew a mobile app called Kindred, and then also started our mobile growth community worldwide. And I am currently the VP of marketing for Branch. I also have this podcast called How I Grew This, except now I actually had over 60 guests, but I have not updated the slide. But if you are curious in hearing from leaders in growth, I highly encourage you to give it a try. Okay, so let's dive into the topic. First, let's talk about retention. So it's really interesting. Every year we have this mobile growth handbook, and we talk about the stages of growth. And we used to say growth starts with acquisition, then engagement, retention, and being an advocate. But this changed a lot during COVID. And with COVID, because there was so much uncertainty in the market and acquisition, user behavior, actually retention became top, and retention became the most important part of the growth framework. So we feel like retention really kind of spans across everything. We actually did a survey around a few months ago, and as part of trying to understand how people are thinking about priorities, and a lot of respondents, over 32%, that they said that retaining users is their biggest challenge. And a lot of advertisers adjusted media types and shifted budgets to address that. So let's talk a little bit about the retention lifecycle framework. So how do we think about, and this is something that someone else came up with it. And if you're curious, you can find the source here is Amplitude, the retention lifecycle framework. So, you have a current users, what can happen to the current user? They can actually become a power user, or they can churn. A new user can also churn. So there's a lot of errors going into churn, but you can actually, resurrect a user. And that user can, so you can go back from a churn user to a resurrected user, but they can obviously then become a current user, a power user, etc., where they can churn back. So I think it's really important to understand that resurrected users are not lost users, but users that you can sometimes give back. So this is basically some of the things that we talk about today. So, when we think about how do we retain users and how we prevent them from churning, it's really important to think about what is actually good retention. So on mobile, retention is a lot tougher than it used to be that it's in other places. And the average app loses 77% of its daily active users within the first day after install. So retention in mobile, churn happens actually quite fast. This is the top 10 apps, next 50 apps, next 100 apps, and first 5,000 apps, and how their retention looks like over 90 days. And you can see that, the biggest drop is actually at the beginning. And then over time, that curve actually starts flattening. So, and they all have the same, although the retentions are better, they will show actually the exact same curve. So the most you can do when you talk about how do you retain users, actually onboarding and the things you can do in the very few days are actually incredibly important in thinking about retaining a user. We also want to show you how retention varies by category. And this is from a blog post that Casey Winters, one of my friends, wrote. We have categories like consumer social, consumer transactional, consumer SaaS, SMB, and enterprise SaaS. And you can see the retentions actually vary greatly by categories. So for a enterprise SaaS company like Branch, obviously like retentions are like 70 to 90%. They're very different than consumer social, where like a great retention is 45%. So you can't, unless a company is in your category, you cannot compare your retentions with theirs because people interact differently with different types of companies and apps. Also, the retention depends a lot on the frequency of users. So I think this is also really important. There are certain apps that are meant to be used every day and other apps that are something that you use once in a while, right? So we have here things that are like daily, weekly, monthly. We call something that you use, like monthly inside the habit zone. And then you have things that are like in the forgettable zone, like things that you use once in a while, like booking a house on your vacation or buying a new car or doing your taxes. These are things that, although they're not part of a habit, they are triggered by something that actually happens periodically in your life. So retention for those, while it is different, it needs to be measured based on like the frequency of a periodic thing that actually triggers that. Instead of looking at them like things that you would do, from daily to monthly. So now let's talk a little bit of churn. Usually, churned users are in fact the largest percentage of most product potential user pool. I think a lot of companies actually think of like, oh, a churn user left, we're not going to go back after them, we keep quantity to get new users. But actually, a churn user might have had an issue with you. And if you can do the right things to get them back, they are actually easier to get back than a completely new user. You don't have to acquire their email address. They already know you. And it's something really interesting. And I think when you think about churn, even at like in today's like hiring environment, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we have a lot of people who left Branch and now came back. It was a lot actually easier to hire those people back than it was because they knew what Branch had, they remember the good things. So we've seen a lot of people come back, and we actually decided to do like a campaign. But in general, people don't go and try to hire people that left, and they don't try to go and like re-engage users who left. So I think that's a really missed opportunity on multiple sides of a business. Most of these users are probably using a competitor's products, so they're high value because if you actually get them and you get them off the competitor, not only will they bring value to you and revenue to you, but they will also take away value from your competitor. So why do users churn? Some of the thoughts: product market fit. The product did not provide sufficient value, or competitors offer more value. Activation: the product is great, but users aren't activating, not finding that aha moment. They don't get to the point where they actually are like understanding that your product is great because maybe you're doing all these things along the way. And I was interviewing someone in my podcast the other day, and we're talking a lot about onboarding. And I think he said something like really interesting. When you think about onboarding and about getting a user to activation, there's different things that you do that are positive energy and give them energy, and things that take away energy. And when you think about like getting a user to a point, you have to really balance the positive and the negative energy. So a negative energy is asking them to sign up, asking them for their email, asking them to fill like things, asking things of them. And positive energy is showing them wow moments, making them feel good, not asking anything of them, but showing them they just got a discount, they just got a gift. I think games do a really good job of that, where when you're onboarding in the game, there's like really positive reinforcements, and they ask you to do very little things. And then as the game progresses, they like show you more and more parts of the game, and they ask you to like go through different things to actually get to the thing that you want. Usage frequency, user activate, but they don't use something frequently enough. And I think there's a lot of research that shows that actually getting someone to pay for something monthly versus yearly, where they have to see the charge every month, reminds them to like go to the gym or use a product. And the more they use a product, the more are likely they are to renew. Cost: product is too expensive, and maybe they're not getting, but that's also very tied to value. bugs, product keeps breaking, everything's annoying, and then low intent users. So I think this happens a lot where, and I think this is really important to understand, is your churn happening from a like actually high intent, high value customer, or a low intent user? So a user who actually didn't want your product, but you acquired because they thought you were doing something else. And this is like a really interesting thing when you think about like ads. You might like be doing ads, and if you misrepresent your product in your ads and someone gets your product and then it's not what they wanted, if you don't work together, if like the marketing team doesn't work together with the growth team or the retention team, the marketing team might bring a lot of users, but those users might not like be, they might churn really fast. And you need to think about your whole user life cycle from before even like them get to the app, from the acquisition channel, and really look at like do cohort analysis on like different messaging to understand what's the messaging that actually gets you the right users that stay with you. So these are some things that you can actually measure and measure to figure out why users churns. For product market fit, you can have a net promoter score. For activation, you can do completion of onboarding, user experience, and see how many people actually get there, have they done this, etc. User frequency, you can compare against similar products and understand, are they using it enough as they are others. For cost, you can do a pricing analysis. For bugs, obviously like your customer support, Twitter reviews. And acquiring the wrong users, you can do surveys, screen reporting, and exit interviews. Why did you leave the product? I think that a lot of companies, both on the enterprise side and the consumer side, do that, and they probably get a lot of information on why people leave. Is all churn created equal? No. In mobile world, we can have multiple types of churn. You can have an app churn or a brand churn. And it's key to understand if a user, when someone churns and maybe uninstalls your app, it's key to understand if the user isn't seeing value from our overall brand and if they're just not seeing value of the app. These show different issues and influence your approach to winning them back. It might be that like your app is not developed enough, but they still love your product. And they will continue buying from, let's say, your store on the website, but your app sucks or your mobile website sucks. So they just don't like using it on mobile. And this has happened to me multiple times. Sometimes mobile experiences are broken. I get really annoyed. And then I stop, but then I still go and like I buy from that brand. Sometimes I go to desktop and I still buy. The thing is, once someone has the app, they have this like intimate connection with you and they're more likely to come back and shop from your app. So I do think it's really important to get them to the app if you can. So I'll give you an example. I used to be an anthropology user. I bought very rarely once when I went to the mall and then maybe on the website. As soon as they got me to install the app, I now, when I'm bored and I have nothing to do and I'm waiting in a line, I just open the anthropology app and I just browse. But half the times from browsing I end up buying. So that would never happen. I would never just go to a website on my mobile device, but the fact that I have the app and they have a really good app and I can buy from it, build this like really interesting, intimate connection with me. And I feel a lot more attached to the anthropology app than I did before when I was just a casual buyer. App churn can contribute to brand churn. So I think this is really important to understand. But I do think it's important to understand who your users are across web and app and get users to identify to make sure that the person, that you understand who they are and you can really look at the entire like customer life cycle. Okay, where does churn start? Most people think about churn in the retention phase, right? So you have a team and they're like, we have all these users, let's do customer marketing and make sure they don't leave. I think the interesting thing is that the churn starts very early on. It starts even before the app install. The churn starts the moment the user starts interacting with your brand and even start deciding to install your app. They have opinions about you, and every single piece of the journey, including the ad that they see, the influencer campaign, whatever, your first interaction with the brand will stick with them. And they all build up to that decision of staying and continue using you or stopping to use you. It's not that you can change their mind, but I think it's very important to know that like even before activation, retention, etc., churn does happen, and it's important to think about the entire user journey. Churn tips, users have an extremely attention span on mobile. You need to show value in the first interaction that wins the next 5 minutes of the attention. It's really important to be consistent in what was delivered in that first session to, if you have inconsistencies, that can create the foundation of churn. You know, a really great example is actually, this happens a lot. I'm on Facebook or whatever, and I see a really beautiful dress, and I click on the dress, and I want to see what happens. And when I'm taken to the website or the app opens, in many cases, I'm not taken to the thing that I saw. So that promise that was given to me in an ad is no longer there. So I am very likely to churn. I'm not going to spend time looking for the thing that I saw. And if I can't find it and things are very different than what I saw in an ad, I actually get so annoyed that I probably will never click on an ad again, and they've lost me. But if the thing that they see, you know, maybe I'm done, well, if I get the thing that I was promised, I'm very likely to keep coming back, even if I don't purchase that exact thing. And you need to balance getting signals to personalize onboarding flows with getting them to that aha moment so they stick around. So the more you can get signals from different places, you know, which ad did they come from? Showing them, you know, did they come from an invite from someone? Did they come from an email where they were promised a promotion? Let's make sure we show all those things to them. Are they in a specific region? And maybe your app has local offerings. Let's make sure you show them things that are very relevant to them. It's a dating app. Let's show them 3 potential dates that actually fit who they are in their profile and what they look for, right? So making that onboarding personalized can really go a long, long way to actually getting them to not churn. Remember the slides I showed earlier? The majority of churn happens in like the first impression. So if you can fix that and make that good, you can like really reduce your churn overall. Key data to understand churn health. It's a lot of things you can do here. You can A/B test around different onboarding flows. You can look at events in day 1, 3, 7. Usually churn starts on the first, but you can build campaigns and things to get them back. And if you see users not coming back, thinking like, what are the most interesting things that can get them back into your app in the early days to build that habit, they can like make sure that they stay with you for a long time. And then obviously product analytics are really important. So understanding how someone engages with your product and where are like the main drop-offs, can understand how you can make those flows better and prevent churn. Resurrection can be a high impact to increase retention, and these are some ways you can resurrect users. Email is a really good one, you know, giving them really good deals and really working with them and giving them very special things if they've churned and you think they're a high value user. Sending them push notification. This is an example of MyFitnessPal. It's funny, I churned off MyFitnessPal and I didn't use it for like years. And then I came back when I was more ready to get back into fitness, ready to like think about my diet again. I came back, and one of the reasons I came back is I actually continued having push notifications, and for years I never deleted the app. Ads and retargeting, I think this is a really good way to like re-engage users as well. And you know, like making sure that like you build a surround sound that I'll talk about in a bit, and making sure that you get them to see you in different places so they don't forget about you. Yeah, so I think to do that, I think one of the really good strategies is to get users to opt into communications. And I've seen this a lot. There's a lot of companies that can help you with this, but you give them a promotion to get their email. And in many cases, I've seen once you get the promotion to get the email, you can send them another email saying, hey, give us your phone number and we'll give them even more off. So a bunch of mine are biking gear because I recently got into biking, but you can see that it's like anywhere from 10 to 25% off to get an email on their first order. So 2 great things about this. One, with the discount, they're more likely to actually get an order. They'll get your products, love it. Now you have your emails and you can retarget them. I think this one is also really important when you start communicating with the user, like in today's world. It's so, like sometimes people really overwhelm you. And these are 2 different examples of clothing companies that send me notification. And one of them is it's called Ostra. It's a biking gear. And it's very cute and they don't send me a lot of notification. It's usually for things, and they're very funny. And they send me things not a lot, sorry. They send me things every like few weeks. I kept them and I did not block the email. The other one is one that I blocked from like a clothing company. I bought something from Facebook called Pamplelon or something like that. They send me so many things and they're not very thoughtful. There's no pictures, and I ended up blocking them. So the way you actually use, the fact that someone gave you their number or their email, I think you should be, it's almost like a treasure thing. And if you abuse that and you really only look at numbers instead of thinking about building a relationship with that user, then I think you can definitely get them to block you and churn. And I think it's also important to think of communications to your street. So you give the users the opportunity to interact, reply to things, give you feedback in text. I think that can also be really good and a way to get them and keep them very engaged. I think the other thing to keep in mind is to be smart with incrementality around initial user acquisition spend. I think this is something that we did a few years ago. But what was really interesting is that when you look at retention for day 7 to day 28, and this is for the same apps, I think we looked at about 100 apps. What we saw, it was really interesting, is that the churn is very different depending where someone came from. So if they came from like referrals or a smart banner on a website where they already knew your brand and you just kind of converted them to a different channel, they were more likely to stay around in the app than someone coming from an ad directly. So this is a really interesting one. I think it's important to look at yours both across channels, but also for your different ad targets. People coming from certain ad campaigns and certain paid channels, they might do much better than others. So it's important to always do cohorting and looking and doing analysis on this to understand. It might not be that it might not be your product that is doing churn, and while in some cases it is, but it could be that like the users you acquired weren't the right users. And the only way you can know that is to be very analytical about like every channel and compare them against each other, not just look at the overall churn rates. The other, I was talking earlier, I think one of the things that's really important, if we make this assumption that if you're in mobile and you have an app, the app is the ultimate, retention tactic. As I was saying earlier, and I've made this comparison before, it's like being in a relationship, right? Like you shouldn't get the users to download the app right away because it's kind of like going steady. It's like your engagement ring with the user. And once they kind of get that and they made this like intimate connection where they have the app on your phone, you're like really kind of like going steady with the user. So it's important that you build a surround sound and you get users to that like going steady moment, because they are less likely to churn from the app if they've like, gotten to the point where they are ready for the app. But if you ask them, you ask them to like get the app as soon as they like, in an ad, they've never heard about you, it's literally like asking someone to marry you on the first date, which can be kind of a put off sometimes. So this is an example. These are some examples of how other companies do surround sound. So here's Pete's Coffee. They have QR codes on different packaging, and they send people to the app store to download the app, and then I think they take you to the actual store to order that you scan from. So I thought this was really cool. They use Branch for this, and this is how they measure all their different stores and QR codes. Okay, sorry. So they this is obviously a link powered by Branch that takes you to the store. This is a company in Asia, so it was really cool. I think sometimes people just say, oh, they have links, download us into Android or App Store. Well, it's so much easier if on those ads that you have around, this is a bus stop, that you put the QR code on it. So this is another really interesting use. The other one is TV. More and more companies are starting to use Branch QR codes for this, but there's a TV, you have you're promoting your app. And not only does it make it really easy for someone to download an app from the TV ad, but TV is very hard to measure. So by using QR codes, you can actually kind of see that promotion worked. Did people use the QR code? Did they really scan the thing and go to the right place? This is Times Radio, and they have newspaper ads. Again, a really cool one. And then wine.com, actually, this is a cool one right in your first package. They send you this little thing where it talks about the promotions and why you should have the app. And they actually won in our Mobile Growth Awards because this is a great way where you already have a relationship with users, time to get them on the app, and the page insert does really, really well in driving up installs. And they've done, I think, a really good job designing it. The other one is desktop. You have users on your desktop. You want them to get the app. A QR code is a really good way to get them to download the app. And I've used this many times. We have a lot of customers using this as well. Email to app is an interesting one. You can add QR codes into email. Obviously, you can have links if someone's opening the email on a phone, but you can also have QR codes in case someone's opening on the desktop. So I think that's actually really cool as well. Also, you can have a text yourself the app. We have a lot of companies doing the text me the app instead of your QR code. You can actually do both. But building this surround sound to tracking people to the app as well. The other one that I think is important is really leveraging a network smartly. So when we talk about building surround sound, you can have signals and do a lot of retargeting ads. And using non-IDFA targeting. So a lot of companies allow you to actually add email addresses of people who churned, and then they match them with people in their own systems, and then you can do retargeting ads that way. And there's a lot of networks that are purpose-built for this kind of campaigns, and this could be a really great way to resurrect your users. Using a two-pronged approach for app churn versus brand churn users. This is, an example of journeys. So, if users are churning the app, but you can get them on the website, giving them promotions on really getting them to download your app through mobile journeys. These are some examples of people who do this very well. And you can actually customize, if you know that they've had your app before and now they're on your website. Sometimes you can give them really good deals to actually get them back into the app. And also those are the users you should ask, they're still using your brand. What was wrong with your app to get them to uninstall it? Those would be a good subset of users that you should interview. The other one is, this one's one that I really liked. I think using referrals as the re-engagement strategy. So there's two ways to think about this re-engagement. One is, a user who invites a friend who was already a user of your product is more likely to come back if they were a user app, and especially if it comes from a friend. But the other one that I think is really interesting when you think about re-engagement, it's not always resurrection, but sometimes it can be resurrection, is this idea of a double viral loop. So a user shares the app, with a friend, that friend ends up engaging, and then somehow you get the original friend to engage as well. So, I think Robinhood did this really well. And it's funny because this is actually something that worked on me. When someone joins the app, they can share the app with other friends and they get a free stock. They don't know what the stock is going to be. It's like a surprise, which is really cool. But when they get that stock, the person who invited them also gets a stock. So let's say I'm in Robinhood. I buy some stuff and then I invite a friend. And then I kind of forget about Robinhood, but that friend goes in, gets the stock, and then because they signed up and they're joining the app, I get the stock. So it gets me, I'm curious what the stock is. I go back into the app and then I'm more likely to continue buying stock or inviting friends. So it's part of this virality. I started the viral loop, but I'm the one getting reactivated in the end if my friend does something well. And you can see this in a lot of if social buying and things like that. This could be a way, if you can think of ways that you can build these double viral loops, you can really build cycles in your activation and double down on it. This is another example of an app that reactivated me. House Party became really big during COVID. And I hadn't used it in a while, but people invited me and the links would take me straight into the room, and it was invite rings that reactivated me and got me to use House Party again. And then, you know, like I join and I'm straight in their house and we hang out, but then I'm more likely to invite people and be part of it. So, you know, some reduction tactics: round down, making onboarding efficient and easy. VSS, grow channels and think of your LTV and really measure across all your channels the LTV and the churn by user. Get push notification email right. Bring a personalization to onboarding and all other aspects of communication. Use referrals. Don't forget to A/B test and drive users to your app from all channels. That's it. Do you have, I'm going to pause here. And if there are any questions or, you know, this is the time to ask them or comments. I see something in chat. Any recommendation on how to prioritize different channels and trying to re-engage users when they start showing low engagements of signs and churn? I would say the best one here is to actually like measure the churn on different for all your channels. I think one of the best ways to do that is using cohort analysis. Branch offers this, where basically depending on how the user was acquired, you can actually add different events and see how those users are doing. So like, you know, like how many people coming from organic search are converting to your particular event, etc. So, and how does it compare with people that were acquired from this paid campaign and stuff like that. So I think that's any other proven successful win-back incentives. I mean, this is a really interesting one. I think the win-back incentive has to be, in a way, you don't want users to just come back, take advantage of like your offer and then leave. The win-back incentive should be tied to actually using your product and using your product better. So I think one of the reasons, like I actually think for referrals, the best incentives are giving them something, right? I refer someone and I get like actual like money, or I get a really fun yoga mat or something like that. So I think the actual best win-back strategies are like percentage off or somewhere that they actually have to use your product. Instead of giving them a free class, giving them like a percentage off of like a 5-class package or something like that. So I think that those are the better win-back, with not giving them something for free, but you're getting them to use your product more at a discount. Let's see. Any other? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. I hope you found this interesting. We will send the recording to you after. If you have any questions or you want to learn more about Branch or just growth in general, I am Mada at branch.io. And I hope to see all of you soon online somewhere, or maybe in person at one of our events. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Thank you.